Is it the right time for you to be buying or selling a home? Don't go it alone. Trust the team at dangemus.com.
I just wanted to say kudos. I thought it. A lot of people are thinking it. You said it.
This is the Dan Gemus Real Estate Show.
Welcome back. I've got Heather Marintet in studio with me today. And a reminder, if you're looking to buy or sell, the Dan Gemus team is always here to help. You can reach out to us 7 days a week at 519-566-5565. And we're laughing here because during commercial break, we're talking about Heather's love for birds. And,
no, you're going to offend all the bird people.
Well, you're just saying that you're not a huge fan of just birds.
I'm not a big fan of them. I was telling Dan I can appreciate them from a distance, but I don't like a bird near me. And that I will deliberately cross the street to not have to walk near a pigeon.
That is
if
so
I can.
funny.
Or like walk a very fair distance away from them.
I love it.
They're not my favorite.
So if you're ever, anywhere near one of Heather's open houses, do not show up in a big bird costume. Don't do it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, don't do it. So listen, our good friend Christian Janisse on the phone with us today from Simply Closed Real Estate Lawyer. Hey Christian, how are you?
Hey Dan, hey Heather, how are you?
Fantastic, thank you. Lots going on, and you're talking about the pilot program in the city of Windsor, Wards 1 and Ward 2, the rental licensing program today.
Yes. Sorry, I was having technical difficulties at the beginning there.
Okay.
So about just under a month ago, the court released a decision about the residential rental licensing program. It is a pilot study in Wards 1 and 2. A couple things I wanted to say is first, there seems to be some misinformation or a misunderstanding. The program was found valid, and it remains in place. It has always been in place. And interestingly enough, I don't think that they're going to be appealing, or if they are appealing, based on my review of the decision, I don't necessarily think that they're going to win. So landlords in Wards 1 and 2 definitely need to be prepared to continue to file their applications if they haven't already. The city has said that they're focusing on education and awareness right now rather than enforcement. But I do think that in due course they're going to be cracking down on this.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit. So in your opinion, Christian, why did the city of Windsor do this?
Okay, so the city of Windsor is one of many municipalities that have implemented a program like this. And I won't go into every single argument because there was about 9 of them. But the big thing was that they said the applicants who were trying to dispute it were saying that the fact that you couldn't have a criminal record in the last 5 years, and it was based on certain crimes which were like homicide, rape, like very heinous crimes, was basically penalizing criminals, which went against the charter. The court said that no, that's not true. It's based on safety for the tenants, and we don't think that individuals who have those types of criminal records within the last 5 years would be able to provide safe housing. A bit of a stretch, but I don't think that that's illegitimate. There's lots of licenses that the city has that require a criminal record check and ensuring that you don't have a criminal history. The other thing was that the applicants tried to say that the licensing program requires the tenants to obtain a license if they want to sublet their property. And by doing so, it conflicts with the Residential Tenancies Act, which allows a tenant to sublet the property. And the court found that that is a misunderstanding or a misinterpretation of the bylaw, and that a tenant does not need to obtain a license if the landlord themselves already has a license. So they can sublet, and there's no conflict with the Residential Tenancies Act. Interestingly enough, they also said that the licensing program governs the relationship between the landlord and the municipality, and the Residential Tenancies Act governs the relationship between the landlord and the tenant. So two different intents. Another argument that was put forward was whether the program requiring that the applicant be 18 years old affected minors or individuals who are 16 or 17 in their ability to seek accommodation. I didn't think this was that great of an argument because the court rightly said the licensing program is about a license to own and operate a property that you own, right, as a rental business. And you have to be 18 to own a property and enter into contracts. And it has no bearing on whether a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old can seek accommodation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the arguments were a stretch.
Just
the
grasping.
Oh, they were grasping, and I think some of them were more legitimate, and they were definitely stronger arguments. But I think based on the fact that there are many municipalities that have these already, and London's had this for many years, I don't think that this one is going to be viewed as illegitimate because it's very identical to all the other ones.
Now, like me, Christian, you have seen the inspection form, the list from the city of Windsor, right?
Yes.
And it's a pretty in-depth list of things that need to be, in tip-top shape, which is not a bad thing. You as a tenant, you want to live in a safe property, etc.
Sure.
Now, there are no doubt going to be many properties. When I say many, I mean a lot, that are going to have a very difficult time conforming to this list. Right?
I agree.
My only concern with this program, because let me preface by saying I want safe housing for all tenants. There's no doubt about it. There are some landlords that are very irresponsible. I'm a landlord and I go above and beyond to make sure my tenants are happy and have everything in tip-top shape. But I am not, not everyone is as caring as some of us, right? So my only fear is right now we are in a crisis, in a housing crisis. And we do not have enough units, whether it's for sale or rent. There is some high demand for rentals right now. And my concern is that as landlords are being forced to license right this second in the middle of this housing crisis, that it's going to force units out of the marketplace, which will just worsen the housing crisis. Is that a valid concern, you think?
I tend to agree. I do think that's a valid concern, and I think that that's why I wanted to bring up the topic, is that I think that the applicants in this case, in my opinion, took the wrong approach, because rather than trying to debate whether the program was valid in terms of is it going to accomplish its goal, or is it too stringent, is it necessary to go that far, I do think that the program is far-reaching. They tried to say it's not valid at all, it's unconstitutional. And obviously when you impose these types of restrictions, even just the licensing fee, it's not too bad. It's, it's just under $500 per year. And I don't think that that's going to, make or break a rental property. But all of these things like compliance and the licensing fee and the fear of being inspected are definitely going to increase the cost of being a landlord, which is ultimately going to get passed on to the tenants. And I think that's where they should have argued, not necessarily the validity in terms of taking it to court, but maybe gone back and forth with the city to see if that they could come to the table and make a program that's a little bit more reasonable in terms of the impact that it's going to have on our community.
Now, you may not have this answer just yet, and I understand if you don't, Christian, but what happens if there is an illegal basement unit and it's non-conforming and the landlord can't get it up to conformance? What would happen at that point to that tenant living in that unit?
So my understanding is that the licensing program does not have the authority to evict the tenant. So the way that I've kind of interpreted how everything would work is that you would get an order to comply as the landlord to either get the tenant up to code or the basement up to code, or if it's impossible to do that, then you would have to evict the tenant and bear the cost and the responsibility or the liability of whatever would come from the landlord-tenant board. In other words, it's two separate streams.
It's your problem, yeah.
But they do not have the ability or the authority, I should say, to say that that tenant needs to move out. It's just a matter of your basement is not conforming to the bylaw.
But the tenant will have to move out, undoubtedly, because it's not conforming, so the landlord will have to take steps to get the tenant out, which my concern is then, at that point, where does the tenant go?
And that's my concern.
That's
the concern. I think those are the valid concerns, right? The arguments that were made in terms of, the pilot program is discriminatory because it's based on wards 1 and 2 where a lot of students are, and then the court says, well, students aren't a protected group from discrimination, and there's no evidence to show that most students are under the age of 18. I don't know if that was a valid argument. I think the discussion that we're having should have been brought up to the city to say, hey, this is a new program. Maybe you came in too strong. It's not going to be, in terms of whether this is necessary, I do think it's important that those houses do become, that they're in better shape
Yes,
so that
they're
people
safe,
have good
yeah.
living conditions. But at the same time, it's not practical because those individuals may or may not be able to buy a house like the tenants themselves. And now they're just going to be forced out of the houses, possibly.
That's right.
At a higher or at a higher cost.
I was going to say, a lot of these units that are going to be impossible to, put into conformance are units that a tenant might be paying $500 or $600 for. Now they got to move out, and the cheapest they're going to find is $1,400, $1,500.
Right.
Good luck.
Yeah.
That's going to hurt.
And I think that to me, I think the city knows that, and that's why they're strongly emphasizing that they're doing education and awareness rather than enforcement, is because I think they know that if they go too strict on enforcement, it's just going to result in many landlords offloading the properties because the cost of compliance is too high. And it's probably going to result in the properties being even more run down because nobody's going to want to buy them. Nobody's going to want to take care of them.
100%.
Mortgage rates have already gone up, and landlords are feeling it there as well. And I know that a lot of the tenants don't have any sympathy for the landlords, but like you said, there are a lot of landlords that do care for their tenants. And this is just going to make it more difficult for everybody, landlords, tenants.
I'm going to tell you right now, those who are landlords and have properties in wards 1 and wards 2, they're not millionaires. Okay, they are your mom and pops that literally have enough money scraped up to buy a second property, or they moved out and didn't necessarily sell their first property, and they are scraping by. Now, again, there's obviously there's exceptions,
for sure.
but the majority are not multimillionaires. That is not the majority of landlords out there. These are not these large buildings. These are single families or duplexes, triplexes, that kind of thing. So now, Christian, before I let you go, someone has asked me to ask you about the new CRA capital gains tax. Do you have any comments on what we learned this week?
Yeah,
from the budget.
I think that it's ridiculous to tax to increase the tax on capital gains. It's everything that the government's doing in terms of we pay enough tax. You know this. Like you have 13% sales tax. You got income tax. Now you're going to raise the capital gains tax. It just disincentivizes business owners to own and operate and contribute to the economy. As a business owner, it's already very difficult. I know a lot of individuals don't have sympathy towards business owners, but I can tell you that it's challenging. Like minimum wage is relatively high. The cost of, having proper books and records, and it just, to tax more just makes it even more difficult and less lucrative for somebody to take on the role of, hey, I'm going to open up a business and maybe hire 5 or 10 people and help the economy grow. Now they're going to say, well, I'll just work for somebody else because the overall benefit is not as high as I'd like it to be.
Christian, I have another listener question, but I have to go to break. Do you have a couple minutes to stick around?
Yeah.
Okay, hang tight. We'll be right back with Christian Janisse from Simply Clothes right after this on the Dan Gemus Real Estate Show.